Imagine walking into a high-stakes auction for your most valuable possession.
Right, like the biggest asset you own.
Exactly. So you walk in, you lock the heavy wooden doors behind you, and you deliberately leave half the potential bidders out on the sidewalk.
Just literally standing there with cash in their hands.
Yeah, with cash in their hands. And then, after the gavel falls, you stand there wondering why your item didn't sell for a higher price.
It sounds completely absurd when you put it like that.
Totally. I mean, you would never do that in a million years. Yet every single day across the country, thousands of home sellers are doing exactly this. And the kicker is they're actually paying a premium for the privilege. Welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me. We operate on this comfortable underlying assumption that in the digital age, transparency is just the default setting of modern commerce.
Oh, for sure.
Like, if you were buying a plane ticket, you see the entire flight board. You check the stock market. You see every ticker symbol. We expect our markets to be visible.
But then you step into the world of real estate, specifically a massive, increasingly hidden sector of it, and suddenly that whole board just goes dark.
Yeah, it really does.
We are looking at a landscape that is deliberately murky. So today, our mission is to explore a fascinating, honestly, slightly unsettling document from a series called The Market Nobody Regulates.
Yeah, by the SIR team.
Right, specifically their materials for episode 4 of that series. We're going to dissect the rise of private listing networks in real estate.
Unpacking how exclusivity is weaponized, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. How massive financial harm becomes totally invisible and why major platforms deliberately choose opacity over transparency.
And these documents from the SIR team, they present a really remarkable piece of analysis because they challenge the very foundation of how we think about buying and selling homes today.
They really do.
They ask the central lingering question, In a world where we have endless data at our fingertips, who actually benefits from what you don't know when you engage with the housing market?
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the way this opacity is sold to the exact people it ends up hurting is, well, it's a masterclass in psychological marketing.
Oh, absolutely. It all starts with the seller.
Right. The platform goes to the seller and says, hey, you are in control. You get this white glove VIP experience.
You choose when your home is seen, who gets to see it, and under what conditions.
And it sounds great, right? Private listing networks anchor their entire existence on that specific pitch of seller autonomy.
Yeah, the seller is told they're joining an exclusive club. And strictly speaking, the platforms making this argument aren't fabricating the concept of choice.
They are signing a paper.
Right. The seller is signing a document and making a choice to list privately. But the analysis points out a critical structural flaw here.
Which is?
Choice without complete information is not actually choice. It is manufactured consent.
Okay, wait. Let me push back on this for a second. I can completely understand why the average seller needs the open market to get the best price. But aren't private listings entirely justified for, certain people?
You mean edge cases?
Yeah. Like if I'm a major celebrity, a high-profile politician, or some recognized executive, I don't want strangers or paparazzi walking through my bedroom during an open house. Isn't privacy a highly valid priority in those specific cases?
So that is the exact edge case the platforms use to justify the entire system.
Oh, really?
Yeah. For a high-profile public figure, physical security and ultimate privacy might actually outweigh maximizing the sale price.
Right, that makes sense.
The problem is how platforms have weaponized that very niche, legitimate need to market to everyday non-celebrity sellers.
So they take the movie star experience.
Exactly. They take the required privacy of a movie star and repackage it as an aspirational, quote-unquote, premium service for, a dentist in the suburbs.
Wow,
Yeah.
so they're selling the illusion of status.
Completely. And the data tells a story that completely contradicts the marketing. According to a BrightMLS study of regional transaction data, which is highlighted in our sources, homes that are marketed privately spend nearly twice as many days on the market.
Twice as long.
Nearly twice as long as homes listed openly on the multiple listing service, or MLS. And crucially, they sell for less money.
Man, the mechanism there is just brutally simple economics, isn't it?
It really is.
A house isn't like a gallon of milk with a fixed price tag at the grocery store. The actual value of a home is discovered in real time through market exposure.
That is the core economic principle at play here. When you restrict who can see the home, you fundamentally restrict the number of buyers who can participate in the price discovery process.
Because fewer buyers means a drastic reduction in competitive tension.
Exactly. And less competitive tension directly translates to lower final sale prices. So when a seller chooses what they think is this exclusive VIP privacy shield,
They are actually just choosing a radically smaller buyer pool.
which brings us back to your auction analogy at the start.
Right. You're standing in the VIP room with one or two people wondering why the bidding isn't going higher, completely unaware of the massive crowd banging on the door outside.
Yeah. And the tragedy is, everyday agents aren't acting like villains here.
No, of course not.
The source document is very careful to clarify the role of the individual agent. Everyday real estate agents are largely not cynical actors trying to trick their clients.
They're just doing their jobs.
Right. They have been handed a sophisticated marketing narrative by their brokerages or platforms that genuinely feels like a premium service.
So they deliver that pitch in good faith.
Exactly. Acting simply as the implementation layer of a strategy that was engineered in corporate boardrooms far above their heads.
It's just a fundamental misunderstanding of what a sophisticated market actually looks like. We hear phrases like discerning buyers and exclusive off-market deals, and it sounds like something straight out of a luxury lifestyle magazine.
But the authors of this analysis point out that equating opacity with sophistication is precisely backwards.
Oh, really? How so?
Look at the truly sophisticated participants in any global market. Commodities, equities, institutional bonds.
Big leagues.
Right. They relentlessly move toward transparency. They spend billions on Bloomberg terminals and data feeds to make the whole board visible.
Because they need the data.
Because they have calculated exactly what opacity costs them. They know hidden markets are inherently inefficient markets.
So it's only the uninformed participant who mistakes artificial exclusivity for an actual strategic advantage.
Exactly.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. We've established that the seller is accidentally locking bidders out of the room because they bought into a flawed definition of sophistication.
Right.
But what happens to the buyer? Like the buyer who isn't on the list for the VIP room.
See, the seller, however misinformed they might be by the marketing, at least got to make a physical decision.
They signed a listing agreement.
Exactly. The buyer never even got the chance to participate. When a home is marketed on a private network, a buyer searching the open market is actually searching a universe that has been deliberately made incomplete.
Entirely without their knowledge or consent.
Yes.
It's like trying to order from a menu where half the best items are printed in invisible ink. I mean, you can't be mad the waiter didn't bring you the steak if you didn't even know the restaurant served steak.
That's a great way to put it. Their information asymmetry is total.
It really is.
A homebuyer is trying to make a rational financial decision, which is likely the largest capital allocation of their entire lives, based on just a fraction of the actual reality.
They have no idea what inventory they missed.
None. There is no technological way for them to find out, and they have absolutely no standing to object to it.
Man, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the historical context makes this trend of invisible inventory genuinely alarming.
It really does.
The open market system we have today, the MLS, didn't just fall out of the sky.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the modern MLS was built, in large part, as a structural response to a very dark history of discriminatory gatekeeping.
Right. I mean, before the MLS became the central clearinghouse, real estate was governed by the physical pocket listing.
Agents literally kept books of available homes in their desk drawers.
Just hidden away.
Exactly. Access to housing was heavily controlled by who you knew, what country club you belonged to, and what you looked like.
It was an era defined by whispered conversations and closed networks.
And closed networks are inherently structurally exclusionary. The MLS was a technological and regulatory mechanism designed to force housing inventory out into the light.
By mandating that listings be shared publicly.
Right. It ensured that access couldn't be quietly manipulated by local gatekeepers.
So when we see the massive rise of private listing networks today,
We are witnessing a structural regression to that pre-MLS condition.
wow. By moving back into the shadows, we are quietly undoing decades of market infrastructure that was meant to keep the playing field level.
And the authors make a vital point regarding this regression. The exclusion doesn't have to be intentional to be real.
What do you mean by that?
Well, A modern agent might put a home on a private network simply thinking it's a neat marketing trip to build buzz, right?
Right.
With zero discriminatory intent
And
whatsoever.
sure, they're just trying to hype up the listing.
But the mathematical result is that an entire class of buyers is structurally excluded from even knowing the home exists.
So the impact of the exclusion is identical, regardless of the agent's intent.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the most baffling part of all this.
Yeah.
If I go to a restaurant and I realize later that the steak was written in invisible ink and I was denied the chance to order it, I'm going to complain.
Sure.
If this private listing system is a regression, if it's statistically hurting sellers' equity and blindly excluding buyers, why aren't people screaming about it?
That's a fair question.
Why aren't there massive class action lawsuits tearing these platforms down?
Because it is, in pure economic terms, the perfect crime.
The perfect crime.
What makes this specific form of market distortion so incredibly durable is the architecture of the harm itself. Think about the recent massive NAR settlement that dominated the news regarding real estate commissions.
Right, the lawsuit that fundamentally changed how buyers' agents negotiate their pay.
Exactly. That settlement was only possible because data scientists and lawyers had a paper trail to follow.
Oh, because the commission records existed in the MLS databases.
Yes. They could look at millions of transactions, see the clustering of commission rates, and mathematically prove a pattern of behavior.
The hidden information left a trackable statistical footprint.
Right. But with private networks, the financial harm leaves absolutely nothing behind.
I mean, how can a massive financial loss leave no trace? I really want to break down the actual mechanism of that.
Let's look at this specific example the sources provide.
Okay.
Imagine a seller who, by choosing a private network, accepts an offer that is $40,000 less than what an open market bidding war would have produced.
$40,000. A $30,000 loss is life-altering.
It is.
That's a child's college fund. That's a massive chunk of a retirement portfolio.
And the real estate industry relies heavily on the fact that the average consumer only buys or sells a house like 2 or 3 times in their entire life.
So they just don't have the repetitions to spot when they're being disadvantaged.
They don't have the repetitions, and in this case, they don't have the benchmark. That seller has no reference point to realize they lost $40,000.
Because their only reference point is the final transaction price printed on their closing document.
Exactly. The bidding war that would have happened, the extra $40,000 generated by open market tension, never existed in reality.
The counterfactual is invisible by design.
You cannot mourn a loss you never knew you suffered.
Wow. And the buyer is trapped in the exact same void.
Precisely.
The buyer who never saw the listing has no awareness of missing it.
For the excluded buyer, there is no moment of denial.
Right.
No seller rejected their offer because the buyer never made one. There is no discriminatory interaction they can describe to a lawyer or a fair housing advocate.
Because the harm occurred entirely outside their field of view.
Yes.
So wait, because there's no moment of denial, it's not that the system is broken, it's that the system is operating flawlessly to ensure no one can ever prove they were ripped off.
That is the chilling legal reality. In our justice system, to bring a lawsuit, you need a plaintiff class that can prove damages.
And here, there is no plaintiff class because the class doesn't even know it has been harmed.
Exactly. There is no regulator stepping in because there is no consumer complaint to trigger an investigation. You can't have a legal remedy if there is no provable loss.
The very architecture of the harm guarantees its survival.
Yes,
Well, if the harm is perfectly invisible, it really forces us to look at the people who built the system.
it does.
I mean, we can empathize with a consumer who gets confused by a slick marketing pitch about exclusivity. But we cannot extend that same forgiveness to the architects of the system.
What's fascinating here is the sheer corporate culpability. The platforms promoting these networks cannot claim ignorance as a defense. These are highly sophisticated organizations.
They employ brilliant economists, behavioral scientists, product design teams, massive legal departments.
They aren't making accidental mistakes in their code.
No way.
These are institutions that have intensely studied information asymmetry. They have built billion-dollar business models precisely on the control and metering of information.
And they watched the NAR settlement unfold.
They watched it, they analyzed the data forensics used by the plaintiffs, and they understood exactly what it meant for the industry's future.
They know the math. They know that a fully transparent market is empirically better for the consumer.
They absolutely know that fully informed participants consistently choose transparency because transparency produces accurate pricing and efficient deals.
And yet, knowing all of that, They deliberately built and promoted products designed to prevent that transparency from happening.
This is not a market inefficiency or a glitch in the matrix. It is a fully informed policy.
So opacity isn't a bug, it is the core feature.
They understand the damage they are doing to the market far better than the consumers they are serving, and they perpetuate it because it consolidates their control over the inventory.
Man. So what does this all mean for you?
That's the big question.
All right, if you are listening to this and you realize the platforms are deliberately rigging the game to keep you in the dark, how do you protect yourself? You still have to buy a house. You still have to sell a house.
Opting out of shelter isn't really an option.
Exactly. So what do you do?
Well, if the system is designed to keep you in the dark, you have to actively choose a different kind of system.
Okay.
The authors of our source material, the SIR team at REAL of Pennsylvania, are actually a real-world case study in how to do this.
Right. Their business structure provides a concrete answer to the platform problem we've been dissecting.
Pointing out a systemic problem is one thing, but offering a viable, tested alternative is another.
So how does their model actually defend the consumer?
The SIR team operates strictly on a fiduciary-only model. Specifically, Vincent and Jane Sear have a rigid policy of zero dual agency.
Okay, define that for a second. Dual agency is when a single agent or broker represents both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction, right?
Correct. Effectively trying to serve two masters with competing financial interests.
Which seems impossible.
It is. The SIR team will represent the buyer, or they will represent the seller, but they will absolutely never represent both sides of the same deal.
It sounds like the ultimate defense is making sure your guide through the woods isn't secretly working for the bear.
I love that analogy.
You need to be in a structure where the agent's legal and ethical obligation runs 100% to you.
That is the core mechanism of protection. If the structural problem is a system that obscures information to benefit the platform, the structural solution is working inside a system where your representative's sole mandate is your transparency and success.
That makes total sense.
And to prove this isn't just theoretical idealism, look at their track record.
Yeah, they have serious numbers.
The SIR team has executed over 400 transactions since 2009.
Wow, over 400.
Yes, across Chester, Delaware, and Montgomery counties in Pennsylvania, as well as Newcastle County in Delaware.
Executing 400 transactions with zero dual agency proves the model is totally viable in the real world.
Absolutely.
But I also noticed the source document lists a massive string of acronyms after their names.
Oh, yes, the alphabet soup.
Right. CLHMS, SRES, RCSD. In an industry full of jargon, what do those actually mean for the listener?
They back up their fiduciary stance with deep, specialized expertise. Instead of just throwing alphabet soup at the consumer, let's translate those acronyms into actual benefits.
Please do.
Vincent holds an associate broker license alongside specialized, rigorous training in luxury markets and senior real estate needs.
Oh, so that's what those stand for.
Mhm.
So that means if you are a senior downsizing, he understands the specific tax and estate implications.
Exactly. And Jane holds advanced certifications, including the RCSD, which is specifically for navigating complex divorce real estate situations.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, a divorce isn't just a standard home sale.
Not at all.
It's a compelled sale involving emotional distress, legal battles, divided assets. You need an agent trained to navigate that specific legal minefield, not just someone with a generic license looking for a quick commission.
Furthermore, they actively push transparency back into the market. They publish weekly market reports covering 41 distinct school districts in their operating area.
41 school districts. That's a lot of data.
They are flooding their clients with the very data that private networks are trying to restrict. They have the training to protect you in highly vulnerable transactions, and they use data as a weapon against opacity.
It highlights that as a consumer, you have a choice in the type of representation you get and the structure of the business you hire, not just the individual personality of the agent.
This raises an important question for the listener to take away. If you walk away from this deep dive simply blaming an individual real estate agent for a frustrating experience, you have missed the larger point of the analysis. Swapping one agent for another, if both are operating inside the exact same opaque platform system, is not a solution.
You are just changing the waiter, but you're still ordering from the menu with the invisible ink.
The critical factor is not just who your agent is, but what system that agent is operating inside, and ultimately who that system is fundamentally designed to serve.
To wrap this up, the source document leaves us with a powerful framework. If you are entering the real estate market, You need to interrogate the system by asking yourself two things.
Okay.
Number one, who benefits from the information you are being shown?
And number two, which is perhaps the most vital question of all, who benefits if you never see certain information at all?
Yeah, that's the big one.
In a modern information economy, opacity is never a favor to you. Your greatest asset, your best defense, is a fully transparent market.
It really makes you step back and look at the whole board differently.
It does.
We started this deep dive talking about how much we trust the data we see on our screens. The flight times, the stock tickers, and we've just uncovered that real estate, traditionally the most heavily regulated, heavily tracked personal asset in our entire lives, can have a completely invisible, structurally opaque shadow market operating right under our noses.
Just quietly siphoning off wealth without leaving a single trace.
Which leaves me with one final thought for you to chew on. If they can do this with the houses we live in, what other massive financial systems in your life are quietly running on private networks you don't even know you've been excluded from?
A very unsettling but necessary question to ask.
Thank you so much for taking the plunge with us on this deep dive. Stay curious, demand see the whole board, and we will catch you next time.